So, James Gunn Superman is officially released to the world, and I loved it. Oh my god, I loved it so much. I love the action, I love the music, I love Lois and Lex and Mr. Terrific and everybody involved, but oh my god, I love David Corenswet as Superman. And ever since I saw it, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. The movie isn't perfect by any means, it can be a little bit messy at times, and it's not the second coming of Kal-El that so many were hoping it would be, but honestly, I don't care, because for 2 hours and 8 minutes, I had a smile on my face and all of my problems in the world disappeared. Every time I've seen it, I walked away wanting to be a better person, and I have so many things that I want to talk about, so this is your spoiler warning. I'm not going to wait any longer. Are we good? Spoilers starting now? Cool? Good? All right. So I can't believe they had a graphic love scene between Gorilla Grodd and Mr. Mxyzptlk. It's crazy, but it's such a James Gunn move. You gotta respect it. Okay, now that people are gone, I can actually talk spoilers. That Batman Jimmy Olsen love scene was wild. This video is brought to you by War Thunder. More about that later in the video. I have so much to say about this movie, starting with, well, the beginning. The movie opens with the sneak peek that we saw a couple months ago, only now with an extremely Top Gun-esque opening title crawl, showcasing that metahumans and Superman have existed in this world and bringing us up to speed with the events of the story, namely about Superman's actions against Baravia. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about the opening. It was all so fast-paced, throwing us into everything and just hammering us, no pun intended, with idea after idea right from the get-go. And I initially had wished it started a little bit slower, giving us a second to breathe and properly introduce the characters. So many things happened right off screen that I felt like I was missing out. But after seeing it a couple more times, I've grown to really love how this movie starts. It's honestly become one of my favorite parts of it. For one, it makes this world feel so lived in. We're not starting from scratch, you know, the real world just with superheroes. We're stepping through a portal and seeing snapshots of a world that has history and has events happen when we're not seeing it. It actually makes the Star Wars comparisons that James has been making all this time so much clearer, not just because of the obvious title crawl, but also because those movies all the way back to 1977 just threw us into everything. We didn't see the origin of the princess or Vader or see the rise of the rebellion until years or even decades later. The movie just starts and we're in this world. And Superman is no different. But also, it does something that I've never seen done in a comic book movie. And that's capture the feeling of actually reading a comic book. Not in the sense of seeing a bunch of panels everywhere like we're Ang Lee's Hulk, but it feels like I went to my local comic store, picked up a random issue of Superman, and just started reading. Comics have this reputation of being hard to get into because of how much history is behind them. But the reality is, the thrill of comics is not knowing everything. You just dive in whenever you want to. You meet characters mid-arc, hear references to past events you haven't read, retcons to things you'll never read. That mystery is part of the magic, and that's how it felt watching this movie. I don't know what's going on. I don't know this Superman yet. I don't know who the fuck the Hammer of Baravia is. All that's introduced before we even start. We just pick it up and we go, and the story explains itself. This isn't the Superman story. It's not a definitive thing like it's the origin or his death or anything like that. It's a Superman story. And I think it's a genius way to frame everything in this DCU, and I really hope it becomes a running theme moving forward for the other projects. At the very least, so like normal people can just go to one of these movies and understand what's going on. But let's get on to the main event, and that's Superman himself. David Corenswet is perfect as Superman. Completely and utterly perfect. After decades of studios and writers trying to crack the code and make him cool, this movie shows up and proves that the character is interesting. He is cool without having to mess with him. From the first golly in What the Hey Dude, I knew we were in for something special. He's even able to blend in some Golden Age style dialogue like chum and have it still work. Clark's corniness and his out of touchness with the rest of the world is why he's so charming and why he's so fun to watch. And honestly, that's all this movie had to do, and it would at least be an 8 out of 10 for me. But they didn't stop there. Gunn didn't make him a wet blanket or some kind of boring Boy Scout. He has a personality. He makes jokes, gets mad and frustrated about serious stuff, or even something as stupid as monkey bots trashing him on Twitter. And that frustration is gratifying when we know all he's trying to do is help people and the rest of the world is holding him back. I think my favorite aspect of the Superman is how much he truly, genuinely values life. And not just human life, but all life. He's polite with the non-sentient robots. He goes out of his way to save animals like a dog and a squirrel. He tries to talk to the engineer and Ultraman before fighting them. He even makes an effort to keep the kaiju alive, a massive monster made in a lab that's destroying the city, and find a way to study it. That's not to say that other movie Superman didn't value life, not at all, but this movie goes above and beyond to show that Superman puts that at priority number 1. Even his relationship with Krypto. At first we think it's just haha, funny dog is hard to deal with, but when he gets taken, it shows just how much Clark cares, and how he'll be kind even when it quote unquote doesn't make sense. Krypto isn't a very good dog. Hell, he's not even his dog, but he's alone and he's scared, and because of that, Clark wants to help him. On a side note, Krypto was also perfect in this movie. So good, in fact, that I bought a lot of merch. I don't want to talk about it, actually. The suit is something that took a minute to grow on me, especially with that reveal photo. I've mentioned in the past that I didn't want to see a bunch of lines all over it, and I was never a fan of the high collar, which this suit did both of, but after a while it's grown on me so much that I've fallen in love with it, especially after seeing it in person and all the artistry that went into it from designer Juliana Makovsky. I've seen people complain that it looks too loose, but I really like how thick and practical it feels. He's not some Greek god showing off his muscles, he's just a big farm boy wearing his work clothes. And I'm glad he didn't evolve into a new suit at the end, because honestly I can't picture him wearing anything else at this point. Before he was cast, David was pretty much the #1 fan cast you'd see for the character. Normally I'm not really a fan of a lot of those popular fan casts I see. They tend to be made purely based off of looks and if the actor was in something else superhero or superhero adjacent before, but David Corenswet was the exception. I've always loved him for the role, and I'm so happy to say that he delivers. The dude was genuinely born to play this character. And an X-Wing pilot. Let that guy play an X-Wing pilot. I just recently rewatched Superman 78, and when I watch that movie, I always fall in love with it all over again, purely because of how perfect Christopher Reeve was in that role. I watch that movie and I see behind the scenes photos, and I think to myself, wow, back in the 70s, Superman was real, and in a way that's not untrue. And when I watch this movie, when I see David on screen, I get that same feeling in my stomach. I forget that he's up-and-coming actor David Corenswet from Pearl just playing a part. I look at the screen and I see Superman. I've seen the movie quite a few times at this point, and every single time there's still moments where my jaw just drops, because that is Superman. He was real in the 70s, and god damn it, he's real again. But what good is a great Superman without a great Lois Lane? And Rachel Brosnahan is perfect as Lois. She has all the spunk, all the attitude that she needs, questioning everything and everyone she meets and not being afraid of anybody. I genuinely think that a Superman is only as good as his Lois counterpart, and we've seen some amazing people play the character, but the dynamic and their chemistry is what's been missing from the movies after 78. These characters are at their best when the romance is put front and center. Amy Adams was great with what she was given, but over the course of the movie she got less and less to do until she was just a plot device for Superman to go evil. Plus, her and Cavill's chemistry was basically non-existent from day one, whereas here it's a standout. You can really feel that this relationship is early on in its life, but is reaching a tipping point, especially that interview, which is such a landmark scene of the movie. It makes perfect sense that it was their chemistry test. Not only is it a great showcase of Clark's personality and seeing that frustration, but also it shows Lois's backbone. She doesn't just baby Clark and constantly support him at every turn, she challenges him and calls him out on his mistakes, either to try and make him better or because of her own personal failings. My favorite part is when Clark pushes back against Lois, saying that he's doing a good job, implying that she's not, and she doubles down and makes the questions 10 times harder just to prove a point. I also really love how much of a focus the Daily Planet got, not just because we have the spinning globe on top of the building again, but the cast had a ton of energy and was super fun to watch. It didn't just feel like Lois in the extras. You know, I gotta talk about my boy Jimmy Olsen, who didn't get shot in the face this time. That's a big improvement. I really like how they utilized Jimmy here, making him an active part of the story in Lois's investigation against Lex, plus the running bit of him being an unintentional Riz Lord everywhere he goes. He might end up getting a spin-off show, which is really exciting. I hope they pull from both the recent run by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber, as well as the original Jack Kirby run. It would be really funny if the first time we see Darkseid in this new DCU is in a Jimmy Olsen show. I love how everyone in this movie, but especially the Planet cast, felt like we were barely scratching the surface of what they had to offer. It felt like everybody had full histories and lives that they live off screen, even the ones we don't see much of. The standout to me though was Beck Bennett as Steve Lombard. I've been a fan of Beck ever since his YouTube sketch days and his time on SNL, so I was really excited to see him here, and he was probably the funniest part of the movie. Honestly, it's kind of a bummer he's only playing Steve Lombard. I wish he was playing like a Justice League member so I could just see more of him. And speaking of other superheroes, we didn't see too much of Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, but I love what little we got. Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner is as expected, the perfect level of asshole, and I'm really excited to see more of him in Lanterns. I also loved Anthony Corrigan as a Metamorpho. The prosthetics look amazing on him, and I would die for Baby Joey. No. I would kill for Baby Joey. Not sure why McFarlane made a figure of him and not Lois Lane or Hawkgirl, but that's another conversation. But the absolute standout of this movie was Eddie Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. He genuinely felt like the smartest person on the planet. His irritation at everybody around him being just so fucking stupid all the time and having to always clean up their mess. And that action scene of him at the fort is probably my favorite of the whole movie. In addition to a Jimmy Olsen spinoff, he might be getting one too, and I'd love to see them pull from Jeff Lemire and Ivan Rice's run on the Terrifics from 2018. Also, his T-ship was really cool. You know, just throwing that out there. But speaking of flying around in cool ships, I want to take a quick second and thank this video's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. Take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from all throughout history, ranging from fighter jets and battle tanks to even biplanes and armored cars from the 1920s, all with incredibly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sound effects placing you right at the helm, making this the perfect game for any history lover. With a wealth of high-quality content to discover, including a worldwide community of over 70 million players in PvP battles, War Thunder has one of the most sophisticated weapon damage models in gaming. Every vehicle is intricately designed down to its individual components opponents all susceptible to damage and behaving like their real-life counterparts. And if your vehicle or an enemy is destroyed, War Thunder shows you exactly what happened with X-Ray View. There are 3 distinct modes. Arcade is for those craving fast-paced matches with simplified physics, Realistic strikes a balance between intensity and authenticity, and Simulator mode ditches all the guardrails for the ultimate historical challenge. The game runs on the in-house developed Dagger engine, which is heavily optimized to deliver impressive visuals and high frame rates even on lower-end machines. War Thunder is free for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and an all-new mobile version for iOS and Android. Use my links down below, and for a limited time on console and PC, new players or players who haven't played for 6 months will receive a bonus pack that includes premium vehicles, the Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium. Thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video, and thanks to my patrons and channel members who help make these videos possible, starting at just $1 a month. On the topic of the Justice Gang, because that's their name now, I definitely think that the idea of having a corporate-run superhero team was something that could have been explored a little bit more. I was expecting, especially with the logo, that the movie would really make a commentary on the state of the superhero industry, and be that sort of reverse Kingdom Come with Superman setting everybody straight. We got a little bit of that with how he impacted people at Jarpenpur, but it would be nice if it got explored a little bit more in the future with Peacemaker or even a JLI movie, or Justice Gang International, I guess we're calling it now. I guess that's their name. One thing that really stood out to me that I really liked was the way that the movie utilized these larger-than-life superhero characters. When all these castings were getting announced, so many people were saying that the movie was going to be overstuffed and bloated purely because there were too many superheroes. And I'm happy to say that at least I don't think that that was the case, and if anything, it's one of the movie's strengths. There's a quote by Grant Morrison, the writer for All-Star Superman and New 52 Action Comics, and a million other things, where they talk about the best way to write Superman. If you're a longtime viewer of this channel, you know this, but for those who don't, they say that Superman is a metaphor. Superman has all the same problems we do, but on a Paul Bunyan scale. If Superman walks the dog, he walks it around the asteroid belt because it can fly in space. And I think despite this movie not really adapting All-Star in a plot or even thematic sense, the Justice Gang represent that idea really well. If you strip away all the superhero stuff from this movie, all of the costumes and the kaijus and the superpowers, the core plot is surprisingly grounded. It's about a guy with a crazy dog that's being bullied by a jerk. He gets arrested and his girlfriend goes to his friends to help get him out. Slap an A24 logo on that thing and you've got yourself an underrated masterpiece. Only instead of just a guy, it's Superman. Instead of a regular jail, it's a pocket dimension where his cellmate is Metamorpho. Instead of a plucky group of friends, it's a bunch of superheroes. And instead of a jerk bullying him, it's an egomaniacal, insane billionaire. Oh my god, I can't believe I made it this far without talking about Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Honestly, it's probably because I don't have the words to say how I feel. He's so fucking good, dude. The entire movie, he is firing on all cylinders. Every word, every syllable is entirely intentional and showcasing not just how smart this character is, but also how much of a fucking asshole he is. Every time I see this movie and I watch his little monologue at the end, I get kind of teary-eyed. Not because I relate to Lex or because I sympathize with him in any way, no, of course not, but because he's such a hater. And it's exhilarating to see a supervillain in a movie who's just plain evil. There's no attempt to make him likable or right, but going about it the wrong way. He's just a hater. He's a pure bona fide hater in every ounce of his being. Oh my god, I can't wait to see how they do Reverse Flash. It's honestly a genius move, either intentional or not, to cast a Lex Luthor as someone who auditioned for Superman and lost the part. And also auditioned for Batman and lost the part, but that's a different part. That's a different point altogether. Every second they were on screen together, it felt like Nick was just one step ahead of David and doing just that much more, and it made their dynamic so much fun to watch. I saw this interview where Nick was asked if he thought he could do some scenes better than David, and he jokingly said yes, or maybe not jokingly, I don't know. But I think that that's the best dynamic you could have between Superman and Lex. That jealousy, that feeling that you could do it better, and it bleeds through every part of his performance. I also love all the people that surrounded him at Luthor Corp, especially this guy with glasses who was later confirmed to be Sidney Harperson from the comics. The same as the Planet, everyone had so much personality and charm to them, and they all got their moments to shine, and it felt like a real workplace. Just filled with people that hate Superman. I especially like that we, the audience, initially think that Eve Tessmacher is just a ditzy girl taking selfies, but she was actually gathering evidence to use against Lex just in case. It shows that Lex is so confident in his ego and his control of other people that he'll completely overlook the things that led to his downfall. The same with Metamorpho. But okay, I guess we should get to some real spoilers now, shouldn't we? Starting with the Hammer of Baravia, or should I say Ultraman, or should I say a clone of Superman that's being controlled by Lex using hexadecimal gaming prompts. I like this change on Ultraman, honestly. Normally, he's an evil Superman from Earth 3 and the Crime Syndicate, but making him a clone lets you use him without dipping into the multiverse fatigue that a lot of people are feeling right now. I think my only issue was that he was a little bit underutilized. It felt like there was a lot more we were supposed to see of him, and a little rivalry between him and Clark before the big reveal. A commentary on the evil Superman and what a corporate-owned Superman could look like. Whereas he kind of just felt like Lex's muscle, you know? But I think there's room to bring him back later down the line and do some fun stuff with him so it doesn't feel like a total waste. I'm seeing a lot of discourse about Clark killing him and trying to compare that to the Man of Steel neck snap, when honestly, I don't really fucking care anymore at this point. The movie makes a point to say that Superman will only kill when necessary, which is true for the character, and killing Zod wasn't the issue with the neck snap, it was more so the way it was executed. The neck snap scene is putting Clark in a position that like there is no winning, when historically Superman should win in an unwinnable situation, and he doesn't, and it just felt kind of like nothing, and they also never did anything with it later down the line, you know? Also, Ultraman's definitely coming back as Bizarro, right? The Pocket Universe is made up of a bunch of cubes. What does Bizarro World look like? I hate to say it, but I kind of went into this half expecting a tiny Batman cameo, at least just like a little tease. All we got was a little shout out to Gotham City, but nothing major, which I kind of prefer, honestly. I'm glad that they didn't go that way. It gave Superman the space to breathe in his own movie and earn the audience's trust without immediately bringing in the bat. But one cameo I wasn't expecting, but honestly should have been, all things considered, and that's Peacemaker makes an appearance, trashing Superman on a talk show. It's funny, I never actually considered the character to be very popular. His show is straight to streaming, and I'm constantly being told how the Suicide Squad was a financial failure, but every time I've seen this movie, the whole theater loses their mind over him. So he might actually be more well known with casual audiences than we're giving him credit for. Or maybe because it's John Cena. It's probably because it's John Cena. World-renowned actor and wrestler. Yeah, it's because it's John Cena, never mind. We also got our first look at Millie Alcock's Supergirl, along with a new poster. And from the tiny sliver that we saw of her, I think she's gonna be incredible. She seemed ripped right out of the pages of Tom King and Bill Casevely's Woman of Tomorrow, which is what they're basing her movie off of next year, right down to her partying on Red Sun planets. I honestly think it has potential to be even better than this movie purely because the source material is so fantastic. But that brings us to the biggest swing of this movie, and probably the biggest point of conversation. At the beginning of the movie, we learned that Clark was sent a message by his Kryptonian parents, but his ship was damaged during its flight and the message was corrupted. For his entire time as Superman, he had only seen the beginning half of the message, which he interpreted to mean he was sent here to do as much good for the people of Earth as possible. But after Lex and Planet Watch invade the Fortress of Solitude, the engineer is able to fix the corrupted message and reveal the other half, that Kal-El was sent here to rule over Earth and repopulate it as a new Krypton. I'm very conflicted about this decision for a lot of reasons. Firstly, I think the way the movie goes about it is a little bit weird. They make a point to tell us that the message is authentic and not a fabrication. The news says it, Mr. Terrific says it, even Lex says it in the privacy of his own pocket dimension. He very well could have been lying, but I don't think he was. Because like, why would he lie in that scenario, you know? At first I thought the translation was off, but then I realized that they translated the first half of the message perfectly, so I don't think that was the case. But despite how much the movie tells us this, Clark never goes to confirm it for himself. And just in general, it was presented in a way that made everything seem kind of funky. But even ignoring that aspect, I think making the L's secretly evil, for lack of a better term, is something that I can't really vibe with. Ever since his creation, Superman's Kryptonian heritage was meant to be an allegory for the immigrant experience. Specifically, creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's experience as Jewish immigrants in the 1930s, even directly basing the character off of Moses. And the character balancing both his human parents and his Kryptonian heritage is a major part of what makes him so special. Not to mention that Jor-El warning Krypton of its destruction and being ignored is a direct metaphor for not just climate change, but also the rise of fascism in the 1930s, which, oh, a little relevant today, don't you think? So I'm not sure how I feel framing him instead as sending his only son to conquer another planet. In all honesty, if this was a few years ago, this very easily could have been an MCU Spider-Man Uncle Ben thing for me that I wouldn't shut up about. Thank God I'm not like that anymore, am I right? You're welcome, everybody. But on the other hand, I think this is a much simpler idea to grasp for general audiences. Not you watching this video, but people who haven't thought about Superman since 2013 or 2005 or even 1978 and still think the character's boring. Like my parents. My dad would love this movie, I gotta tell him. They gotta totally go see this. It trades some of the nuance for a strong and easy to understand moral dilemma for Clark, turning it into an arc about choosing your own fate and your own purpose in life. And also differentiates this version of Superman from what we've seen before in the movies and takes a genuine wild swing. We've seen it with stuff like... And also, My Adventures with Superman kind of toyed with this, but even then didn't really go this far. So instead, I think where I've ended up on this, besides the movie does so much else right that I don't really care, is that I don't think this decision is done with bad intentions or anything. For one, it's more so about Clark's relationship with Jor-El and Laura specifically, not necessarily about Krypton or his heritage and culture as a whole. We frankly don't know if all of Krypton was like this, if all of them were conquerors, or if it was just the L's. He still wears the shield, he still has a good relationship with Kara and Krypto and the robots. That bond between him and his home planet isn't broken, it's just his relationship with his parents. I also think it's so the movie can more easily put a bigger spotlight on Clark's relationship with Ma and Pa Kent, and the impact that they had on the person he is today. It's more about nature versus nurture than anything else and the adopted experience, which is something that's a little more easily understandable for someone's first Superman movie. Superman 78 and Man of Steel made Jor-El the defining aspect of Clark's motivation as Superman. 78 literally cast a Marlon Brando who didn't want to fucking be there and made him first credited. He's a magical AI interface that can answer any question and figure out any dilemma, it might as well be like he never even died. Both of those movies framed him as an infallible god figure, basked in light, who sent his son here for a reason, and Superman is just fulfilling that mission. Man of Steel took it a step further and made Jonathan Kent all morally conflicted. Instead of being an anchor for Clark, he didn't know if Clark should use his powers for good or not, and he made it seem like Clark should have let a bus full of kids drown. Even if that's not what he meant, I know what he meant, I know what that movie's trying to say. I'm sorry, that's how it comes across to most audiences. You have to realize that, right? You have to. And I've always believed that it was that decision with Jonathan and the Jesusification that plagues not just Man of Steel, but a lot of modern Superman media that made that version of Clark so hard to grasp onto for me and a lot of other people. And so what Gunn is doing here is essentially flipping that and showing how important Jonathan and Martha were to Clark's upbringing, removing even the AI version of Jor-El to really hammer that home. It's a bit of an overcorrection, but I kind of see the vision. It's also probably why Jonathan didn't die in this movie like in other Superman media, even though I was basically positive that it would happen. Of course, Jonathan doesn't have to die. We've seen it before where he doesn't, but I think if he is, then Gunn really wants us to connect with Pa Kent and emphasize that relationship and make his potential death hit even harder later down the line. Honestly, I feel kind of bad now thinking he had some like grave illness based on the trailer when he was just old. So I get why they did this. I don't really like the trade-off and the implications. It's a change that messes with an essential part of the character's roots. Plus, I think future installments could help find that middle ground, right? Because I don't think this is the last we're going to see this message. It feels like too big of a swing to not play a role in something moving forward, whether that be a sequel or in Supergirl. I'm not sure I want it fully retconned because it is a unique decision for the movies and so integral to the themes for this one, but I think there could be potential arcs about Clark regaining his trust of his parents and maybe getting involved with an iconic villain whose entire MO is about information and artificial intelligence. I don't know. Oh, it's almost like there's like shit that's gonna happen in future movies. Whoa. And even more than that, I think that the movie's using the Kryptonian allegory completely differently from what we might know in the source material, reframing the whole idea of what it means to be a human. Traditionally in the comics, Clark's Kryptonian side represents the creator's roots as Jewish immigrants, or the general immigrant experience like in Gene Lu and Yang and Guru Heroes Smashed as a Clan, which is one of my favorites. And the human side, for all intents and purposes, represents life as an American. There's a direct link between in-universe anti-alien sentiment and real-life xenophobia, which is why when John Byrne has Superman push away his Kryptonian heritage for his human side, it comes across as a little bit weird and anti-immigrant for a character where that's so integral to him. However, in this movie, especially with Clark's speech at the end, I think that the message is completely different. When Clark says he's as human as anyone and that's his greatest strength, that doesn't mean that he's American abandoning his heritage. I think it's more so about asking the question, what makes someone human? What makes their life valuable, deserving of kindness and respect? And the movie concludes that everyone is human, no matter the race or gender or ethnicity or even planet they come from. Nobody is illegal, nobody is an alien, and everyone is deserving of love. People were screaming about this movie being woke long before it came out because, let's be real, culture war bullshit will always happen with any movie no matter what. And so I'm glad the movie didn't try to shy away from its messaging to prevent that, because the character has historically always been rooted in politics since his creation and being touted as the champion of the oppressed. The Baravia and Jarhampur conflict is also a pretty clear allegory for real life events, with a stance that most major blockbusters would absolutely shy away from in this political climate. It doesn't try to both sides it or find some middle ground like so many others would. I have to be a little bit vague because YouTube doesn't like when I get specific about this kind of stuff and it'll demonetize me, but the movie is unapologetically about kindness and the preservation of human life, no matter the administration or the border, with the incredible powerful visual of a child holding up the flag and asking for Superman's help. And even though he wasn't able to show up at the end to save the day, he did show up in spirit. His influence on Green Lantern and Hawkgirl and even Metamorpho is the reason all of those people survived. It's a story that says anyone can be Superman and everyone has what it takes to stand up to what seems like an impossible force. And this movie does it in a really smart way that merges key aspects of real life countries along with the fictional country of Baravia, which has existed in the comics, where now if anyone tries to point a finger at it and blacklist the people involved, Gunn and everyone else can say, no, it's not about that, it's about that. And all of this isn't surprising knowing James Gunn's last couple of projects, which commented on eugenics and the alt-right pipeline and American imperialism. I mean, come on, baby, it's James Gunn. And frankly, my biggest problem with the movie was that there wasn't enough James Gunn. Before I went to this movie, I did my best to wipe my mind of any and all expectations. I didn't want to think about it as the start of a universe or the savior of DC as a whole, or even needed to be like a perfect Superman movie or anything. I just wanted to see a James Gunn Superman movie. For context, I'm a huge fan of his previous work. The Guardians movies, especially Volume 3, are incredible, and The Suicide Squad is probably my favorite DC movie, period. I'm sorry, The Batman. I connect with that movie on such a personal level, and it strikes all all the right chords for me. Literally a movie that feels like it's tailor-made for me. It even has like my second favorite Doctor Who in there. What's up, 12? And you can track James Gunn's directing style and his growth through all his movies, with Guardians 3 and The Suicide Squad being what I think is him at his absolute best. The style is there, the action is there, I sob like a baby every time. Just all around incredible pictures that, despite how much people talk about them, still feel weirdly underappreciated to me. So for the entire cycle of this movie, I was excited to see what he was going to bring to the table. What tricks were up his sleeves, how he'd weave his usual style and edge with the hopefulness of Superman to make it his own. And I don't want to say I was let down by that, because the movie is still in a lot of ways very him, but it's not to the same degree as Guardians or The Suicide Squad or Peacemaker. To some, that might be a plus who thought he wasn't a good fit, but for me, that's what I was looking for. If anything, this movie feels kind of like a Sam Raimi movie in a lot of ways, with the random civilians with insane personality. Or weirdly enough, the Wachowski sisters Speed Racer from 2008, which by no means is a bad thing, especially in the current blockbuster landscape. Those are some of the best of all time, but they're not very James Gunn. The movie is still funny, there's still these crazy sweeping camera movements in basically every shot, and what few needle drops there were worked really well, especially the last one, which is the identity of the movie. But the whole time, I kept feeling like the movie was just holding back just a little bit, like the full Gunn flavor was trying to break through, but never quite did. I can feel that there were a lot of jokes cut in the edit, that a lot of his edge was smoothed off. Allegedly, in an earlier cut, there were even chapter titles like in The Suicide Squad, which would explain why the movie feels sort of episodic. And I would honestly kill for a director's cut that kept them and anything else that was trimmed out. I can see where they would have gone in the movie. I see it like fades to black and fades back out, and it's the only thing, after seeing it a couple times, it's the only thing I genuinely dislike about the movie. It's like, oh my God, I hate test audiences so much. Get me in the room in there. Get me in there. A lot of people say that they didn't want Guardians of the Galaxy but Superman. But honestly, I kind of did. That doesn't mean the movie is bad by any means or any less well made. It's still a blast to watch and incredibly well directed. It's just a little bit safer than I was initially expecting. But I think there's a reason for that, because this movie has some insane, genuinely insane weight on its shoulders. Not only was this the start of a new DC universe in which the last one had a horrible reputation and was trying to earn audiences' trust back, it also had to make a whole bunch of money for Warner Brothers to make up for all their shitty decisions the past few years, including said previous cinematic universe, and it had to prove that James Gunn was fit to be running the show as the head of the DCU, and it still had to prove that people still wanted to see superhero movies in general with all the talk about superhero fatigue, and it had to prove the character of Superman, who most general audiences thought was boring for the past 20 years, was actually cool and worth seeing at the movies. Seriously, just so many expectations on this movie from so many different angles. The conversation around it for months has been excruciating, never mind all the weird culture war stuff. So no wonder that either WB or frankly Gunn himself wanted this to be a little bit safer. I think that this is probably the best fun blockbuster you could get. Not in a patronizing, just have fun, don't think about it kind of way, but a genuine blast of a movie at the theater, which is all it really needed to be. But personally, when you compare it to something like The Batman or Sinners or even Barbie, it doesn't scratch that itch for me, which is fine. I still fucking love this movie. The Batman didn't have a decades-long reputation to fix about the character. If anything, this is more similar to Batman Begins. That movie was a little bit safer because it had to fix a lot of cultural goodwill and repair the brand so it didn't crack $1 billion. A lot of people would call that a flop by today's standards. It wasn't until The Dark Knight came out and Nolan was allowed to go full Nolan that everybody was on board again, and it broke that barrier. This Superman movie is no different, so I'm hoping the future reflects that. We know there are a ton of DCU projects in the pipeline, like Peacemaker, Lantern, Supergirl, Clayface, and tons more. Gunn has even said he's been working on a project that hasn't been announced yet, but what about the future of Superman himself? I think despite how much I love this movie, a sequel has so much potential to be even more. I see it sort of similar to the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. If this was Gunn's litmus test, a safer crowd pleaser to see if audiences would turn up for Superman, then a hypothetical Superman 2 where he's not burdened by as many limitations and can cut loose a little bit could be on a completely other level. The question arises of what villain they end up going with. Superman has a huge and amazing cast of rogues that haven't even been touched in the movies. Despite having 8 feature films, we literally only seen Lex Luthor, Zod, and kind of Doomsday. Not really. I'm not counting that. And this is the perfect opportunity to introduce other villains and bring them to the cultural zeitgeist. That all feels like a separate video, and I'm gonna be honest, I've been cooking up some fanboy pre-write ideas a little bit on the side that I'm excited about, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But as the start of this new DCU, there's also the question of when will Superman meet Batman? And could we maybe get a World's Finest movie? Not about the two of them fighting, but instead showcasing how great and important their friendship is to one another. I definitely think that the next Superman sequel should be standalone, not forcing in a crossover just yet. At most, maybe a team up between him and Kara, but when we eventually do Batman and Superman, I've gotta say, after seeing David in action and the way that Gunn has adapted this character, I'm honestly becoming a believer in the bring in Robert Pattinson school of thought. And I know that James Gunn has said numerous times that that's not not going to be the case. But in my heart of hearts, I still hope it's some kind of possibility. I'm still kind of flip-flopping between it. There's a ton of holes that would need to be filled, and I definitely still think it should be Matt Reeves' decision. It would be hard to explain. I'm not going to lie, right? And I also want to see the Bat family. I don't want to have to wait 20 years to see Nightwing. But right now, we finally have a Superman and a Batman who are both more or less accepted as perfect for their roles. And I worry that might not be the case with whatever they do for Brave and the Bold. Like, I'm sorry, none of these Batman fan casts are doing it for me. They're both around the same level of experience as opposed to a younger Superman with an experienced Batman. They both have similar arcs when it comes to their relationships with their fathers. It also doesn't help that I've had this sitting on my desk for the past month. I think that's been influencing me a lot. One thing that this movie is really enlightening for me, and it's something that I've known for a while, but it's putting a massive spotlight on it. And that's how fucking stupid online movie discourse has become. It was already pretty bad before the movie came out, which I've talked about. Not only the impossible expectations that it had to meet, but also the culture war bullshit that's been surrounding it. It's clear a lot of people made up their minds the second James Gunn was announced and are seemingly unwilling to give this movie a fair shake and actually engage with it on its own terms. And don't get me wrong, if you didn't like the movie, that's perfectly fine. I definitely think the reverse is happening too, where people are ride or die for James Gunn no matter what and not accepting any criticism. I have plenty of issues with the movie despite how much I loved it. You know, opinions are opinions and you are welcome to yours. And normally that goes without saying on this channel, but I'm being very clear because people really like to just ignore what I'm saying to get mad at me. So don't put words in my mouth to try to make it seem like I'm saying you have to like this movie, because that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I think a lot of people clearly walked into this movie with a pre-written take in hand. Talk about a fanboy pre-write, am I right, baby? That wasn't in the script, that was on the spot, hell yeah. Whether or not that's you specifically watching this, probably not. You made it this far into the video, so it's probably not you, you're probably chill. But a lot of people did. The conversation around this movie became less about the movie itself or anything that it does, but more so instead people trying to validate the opinion that they had 6 months ago, or a year ago, or even 2 years ago. The big one that I keep seeing is that this movie is too much like Guardians of the Galaxy and that James Gunn's humor ruins it. When in reality, this movie is the least James Gunn thing he's made in the past decade. I would know, it's my biggest disappointment. That critique existed long before anyone saw a single frame, but people decided that the moment Gunn was announced, and now they're just trying to follow through on that narrative. I also know that there are people who months ago sought out plot leaks for this movie, literally just read about what happens like it's a Wikipedia summary, with the sole intention of getting mad about it. And so when the movie finally came out and the leaks turned out to be somewhat true, instead of watching the movie and seeing how the events unfolded in the way that was like intended, they just said the leaks were right and they made me mad, so I'm mad, when you didn't even try. And honestly, I think a lot of that comes from YouTubers, people like me. A lot of online discourse is directly informed by YouTube. All it takes is for someone to sit in front of a camera, grab a shitty fucking softbox light, be the first to say something, and people will eat it up like it's gospel and repeat it everywhere. I mean, we saw it with a good movie, but not a good Spider-Man movie. Ruined my buddy Alex's life over here. From a creator perspective, it can be seen as hurting your credibility to spend months or even years on a narrative and have to backpedal when it doesn't turn out to be the case. And in the online space, it's better to double down constantly instead of ever admitting you were wrong. I don't think it's always done maliciously or anything, but that trickles its way down to the rest of the discourse. We're not really talking about the movies anymore. We're talking about whether it confirms our existing narrative. Because being wrong is apparently the worst thing in the world. Changing your opinion, being open to new ideas is seen as a failure nowadays. And that sucks, right? But that has to be my absolute favorite part of this movie. That one line that Clark says. In my favorite scene, this quiet and understated moment between Clark and Lois, with a fourth dimensional imp going on a rampage right outside their window. Just a small, tender moment between these two people, where Lois says that she was just a punk kid who questioned everything, questioned everybody, and Clark looks at everybody and trusts them, thinks they're beautiful. And Clark says, maybe that's the real punk rock. To be kind, to love. That's the new counterculture. That's the new cool. In a mainstream where cruelty is the point, we should all strive to be able to look at one another and trust each other and see that everyone is beautiful in their own way, even if it's naive, even if it's impossible, and the rest of the world will never see it that way and judge you for it. To still, despite it all, have that hope that people can be good. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty fucking punk rock to me. But what do you think about James Gunn's Superman? What do you want to see moving forward? If you like this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Remember to use my links down below to download the game free for PC, console, and mobile, and receive your bonus pack for new and returning players who haven't played for 6 months. Special thanks to Eggwitch, Peebo, Wow I'm a Pen, Tyrizzle217, Wes Jansen, GG Black Sheep, Kyle, Weatherhearts, Bloof Gribble, Mansington, Thai Food, and Christian Zhivago for joining us Spectacular Fanboys on my Patreon and channel members. This has been TroyBoy17 coming at you live. Be responsible, be punk rock, and I'll see you around.